One of the most highly anticipated events on the annual calendar, the Rhino Charge, brings together Kenyans from across the social spectrum for the biggest conservation fundraising event of the year. Growing from strength to strength, the popularity of the event is evident by the rush to register, with all places being filled within hours of the entries opening just 1 month after the 2016 event. Teams entering in July must pledge a minimum of 1.5 million shillings just to secure their entry, with a maximum of 65 places available. All funds raised are donated to the Rhino Arc Kenya Charitable Trust, whose main ambition is to safeguard Kenya's mountain water towers and forest ecosystems through the use of electrified fences, community interaction and support, as well as partnerships with the Kenya Wildlife and Forestry departments. Since its inception 29 years ago, the event has raised over 1.3 billion Kenya shillings. This unique off-road 4x4 event is like no other on the planet, and the challenges the competitors face each year are matched only by the efforts teams go towards preparing the ultimate vehicle. As well as a tough charge car, a team of strong runners whose ability to read the terrain and guide the driver over the various obstacles and also understand the limitations of their mount is critical to achieving a good result. The 2016 event had taken the crews to the banks of the Olganyet River near the Loiter Hills, a Mara-type charge. The thick bush and steep-sided hills had proved a tough challenge, with victory eventually being taken by the McKittrick team in Car 5, their 4th title to date, and they would be looking to retain their crown in 2017. Each year the charge moves location to reduce its environmental impact and to support communities across the country who benefit from hosting the event on their land. In 2017, the event headed north once again, following the Great North Road past Ololokwe, the Matthews Range and crossing the edge of the Chalbi Desert to the slopes of Mount Marsabit. This incredible volcano, with its multiple craters, lakes and beautiful cedar forest, rises out of the surrounding desert, creating its own unique weather system. This year's event was dubbed by the organisers the Upside Down Charge, by virtue of the fact that it had very few visual landmarks, with the main challenges being deep gullies and ravines that would only become apparent once the competitors arrived at them.
This is basically a huge lava flow that came out of Marsabit Mountain, and over the millennia it has eroded into a series of gullies and traps which you cannot see. So some very short, highly technical sections and some fairly easy sections in between. Definitely a runner's charge, in my opinion. They're going to have to scout, they're going to have to plan, but who knows, let's see tomorrow what it brings.
Access to the venue is strictly controlled through pre-booked tickets only, in order to maintain security and accountability of behaviour consistent with the conservation mission of the Rhino Arc Kenya. Different coloured bands differentiate between competitors, officials, sponsors and spectators. This year, HQ was located close to the edge of the Gough Bongoli crater, which has one of 3 volcanic crater lakes on the Marsabit mountain and which offered spectacular views across Kenya's northern landscape. Scrutineering is held the day before the event, and this year the organisers would be enforcing an old rule regarding the weight of teams' vehicles, which was restricted to a maximum of 3 tonnes.
It's about levelling the playing field a little bit. What we've seen out in the field is that when you have power and weight, it results in traction. And those cars, as they're heavier and stronger, can climb up hills and bushes that the lighter, smaller cars just simply can't do.
The team from Papyrus were on hand to weigh all vehicles, with some nervous teams standing watch. It's also a chance for crews to get a first glimpse of the latest modifications, upgrades and ideas, as well as plenty of banter amongst old rivals, with both old hats and newcomers attempting to guess the challenges they would face the following day.
Well, we're a rock crawler, right? So I mean, as long as there's rocks, we're good to go. And bushes, well, we're a good 3 tons, so we can push anything down.
We have a small, simple ambition. We want to win the sponsorship, bringing the most money into the Rhino Arc, and we want to win the driving event as well. That's our small ambition for the event.
Honestly, just go out and have fun, do our best. My brother's on the team with me, so put a strong team together. We have a nice car, and again, the conservation aspect. So
Safety improvements this year included the mandatory installation of 4-point harnesses and helmets for the driver and navigator, as well as seat belts for all rear-mounted seats as well. Driver's briefing was held at 17:30, with clerk of the course David Lowe giving a first insight into what lay ahead. Finally, the maps were released and crews headed back to camp to start plotting their course. 13 checkpoints must be reached within 10 hours in the straightest line possible, with teams starting from different controls randomly selected from a hat. The team that reaches all the checkpoints in the shortest distance is declared the winner. The decisions made around the planning table are often critical for teams to have a chance to win. As the sun rose on the morning of the charge, crews lined up behind their designated guard post near HQ. Anticipation was high, with crews feeling confident before heading out to their start control.
Last year we did 100 metres, so we hope to do more than that. A few more changes, so yeah, all good, all good.
For the Aber Daredevils, it wasn't all plain sailing. Their clutch bracket let go before they set off for their start control, but they were fortunate that Bradshaw's workshop were on hand to weld it. They'd make it to the start control 2 minutes after the charge was officially underway. We joined the teams at Sandstorm for the start of the day's action. Anticipation turned to trepidation as crews got a first glimpse of the deep gorges that surrounded the control, which didn't seem to be such a challenge the night before.
Definitely, just drop straight down.
So it doesn't look too difficult, except just behind you there's a major drop, so, and I'm sure there are going to be lots of those. So for the first time we haven't made a plan, so this is what we're working on now.
At 07:30, the countdown was called out across the venue by radio and the 2017 Rhino Charge was underway. Team AK-44 headed off in the direction of Vineyard, choosing an anti-clockwise direction to tackle their planned route. They were followed by 8 and 14, who had chosen a similar strategy. Not wanting to attack from the start, the 3 teams opted instead to look for a crossing further up the ravine, where the sides were gentler. AK-44 would start well, completing the sector with the 4th shortest distance. The Hatarius Chargers had chosen to go clockwise and heading in the opposite direction towards Greensteads. Putting the car through its paces early, they'd descend into the first of the day's gorges, opening up a route that would see them set the 3rd shortest sector distance. Opening the route from Greensteads were the deranged Rovers, who would be the first to tackle the valley in the opposite direction. With a tough climb up to Sandstorm, they managed the 7th shortest sector distance.
Good man.
There we go.
The roving rogue started at Brook House and arrived at Sandstorm feeling confident. Crossing the valley at Greensteads easily, they were making good progress. Their day would end after just 5 checkpoints, when first the front and then the rear differentials self-destructed. The Bush Babies were approaching from Brook House, enjoying an easy start across the flat terrain and arriving at the gorge with Sandstorm in sight. After a quick look at the approach, they were forced to follow along the edge of the gorge in search of a crossing higher up. Similarly, Car 23 arrived confidently before being forced to go around. This year, more than in recent events, it was critical that the runners went ahead of the cars, otherwise valuable mileage was lost looking for crossing points. Another ladies' team, the Laughing Hyenas, started at Brook House, seemingly heading towards Greensteads, before turning back and finding this crossing point on their way to Sandstorm.
Wow, tough. We started at Brook House and decided not to do anything too brave there and just come up here instead. So, yeah, we'll get into it.
Because otherwise we're going right up.
At Slater and Whittaker, the Pink Horns were setting off for their first ever charge, hoping to challenge the more established ladies' teams for the Coupe de Dame award. Hoping to make a big impact on the leaderboard this year, Team Kobe set out towards Sitao. Confidently attacking the first gorge in their rock crawler, it wouldn't be long before they would reach the next gorge and have to change their strategy and go to Copycat instead, their planned route already in trouble. Team Landmauers would have a short day. Leaving Slater and Whittaker, they would complete just one checkpoint and cover just 4.5 kilometres. The runners from the Gumtree team were working hard already, running through the bush searching for the best crossing point.
I think you're right, we should go further south again.
Yeah, that way.
What we reckon?
It's fine on this side. It's really rocky, but it's gentle.
Yeah, the trouble is, this is not the main lugger here. This is a tributary, so we're just going to be...
Whilst winching is often the name of the game, sometimes raw power is all it takes to climb some of the steep inclines, as demonstrated here by the Wait a Bit warriors as they made their way from Slater to Tangerine.
So we spent like more than an hour scouting, trying to find a way across this valley, and it's really, really horrendous. There's only one way out and we're going to have to winch.
The Bundu Fundis were making their approach from Toolcraft, one of the more difficult starting points. Previous winners and always determined to take the straightest line, whatever the cost, they would set the third shortest sector distance, but it cost them 4 hours and they'd spend the rest of the day playing catch-up. We ride with the team to get a feel of what the Rhino Charge is all about.
It's not serious. It is. I think it's one of the most serious things we've ever done on the Rhino Charge, for sure, going up.
Ian Duncan, another previous winner, was also in trouble. Getting up the steep valley side to Slater, destroying the rear hub on a rock, they would abandon the car in situ, returning the following day to recover it. Team Ole Choda had started at Tangerine and had gone straight to Hardy and then back to Slater and Whittaker, doing some impressive straight lines. They're seen dropping down to cross the valley to Toolcraft in the opposite direction to the Bundu Fundis, but would lose time when they had to change a broken prop shaft. The Fat Rhinos was another team that started at Toolcraft, originally planning to go to Sakau, but decided the gorge was impossible, so they were forced to replan their route and diverted to Slater and Whittaker, doing some impressive winch work as they approached the control and in the end having a stormer of a day. The action was heating up at Sandstorm as the hardcore teams began to tackle the valleys that surrounded the checkpoint. The Smiling Shenzis, with 2016 Olympic gold medalist Krista Cullen on board, started at Copycat and took a straight line to Sandstorm.
It was actually not a bad crossing just here, but trying to come down this cliff was proving a bit difficult.
They then dropped down straight into the valley, which other teams had avoided earlier, making light work of the descent before following the cattle tracks up the other side. They encountered Team Scruffy coming in the opposite direction. Team Scruffy were approaching from Vineyard, opening the route across the valley to Sandstorm. They found their way down the cattle track after some good scouting, but the climb out would prove to be very difficult. Their winch not up to the task, and they would lose almost 2 hours, but eventually made it out. Team 48 followed the same route from Vineyard, dropping down smoothly into the valley before following the river downstream and then climbing up to Sandstorm. They'd have to make their way past the struggling Team Scruffy with some quick winch work that would see them set the second shortest sector distance. That honour went to Team 5, led by Alan McKittrick. They followed the same crossing as Team 48, but had been straighter out of Vineyard to take the sector win by 109 metres. Strong runners and a clear understanding of the car's capability being demonstrated in these technical sections by these teams. Riding on board, you get a sense of the climbing abilities of these monster machines. This year, the gauntlet was made up of 3 controls: Highlands, KWS and Auto Express, with the winning distance measured between Highlands and Auto Express. KWS was the highest point of the charge, perched on top of the only upward hill on the venue, giving a bird's eye view of the entire course and a cliff face separating it from Highlands. One of the teams arriving at KWS was Team 61, settling into the charge gently. However, they would spend much of the day stuck in the bottom of the valley near Brook House with a broken diff. Their runners would climb to the top to collect the part to fix the car, and they eventually made it out. The South Africans were one of the early pathfinders from Highlands, battling their way up to Auto Express, taking 2 hours in the process. Team 65 struggles were compounded when the car refused to start, and a rather precarious attempt to a bump start down the hill also failed to get them going. Later, as they climbed up to Auto Express, the car overheated in spectacular fashion. The majority of crews, like the King 21s, chose the direction from Highlands, tackling the rocky descent down into the valley with ease, before a more difficult climb that required the teams to winch up the steep incline.
I think he's going to put his left tyre on there.
For the unmodifieds, like the Land Cruiser of the Aberdare Devils, just getting over all the big boulders was hard enough, and moving the rocks sometimes revealed some rather unhappy residents. Team 7, seen here descending into the gauntlet, would have a tough day and would only make it to 6 controls. For the spectators, it was a chance to watch and be close to the thick of the action as teams crashed and winched their way through challenging course. Hardy was the furthest control on the venue, out on a limb to the south, its feature being based at the bottom of a steep drop. We ride on board with the Wait a Bit team as they made their way past Team 17 before meeting the Bush Babies at the top of the hill. Team 17 in their unmodified Land Cruiser had to work hard to climb out of Hardy, showing some true Rhino Charge spirit and skill as they clambered over the huge boulders. Over at Brook House, several teams found themselves in trouble at the bottom of the valley. Team Good Times were approaching from Vineyard. However, as they attempted to winch up to Brook House, the front winch burnt out. The rear winch then snapped as well, leaving them stranded for hours. Not willing to call it a day, they eventually manhandled the car up the side of the valley. It was an impressive effort, and they'd go on to complete 7 controls, placing them 28th overall. Team Battock would spend much of the day in one place, also stranded with no winches. They'd dropped down from Brook House towards Tangerine at the start of the day, where they remained on a rock, spending 7 hours before getting going again. The Unimog of John Kanyali was making better progress, working their way across from Brook House to Greensteads. At the end of the day, John made the incredible decision to donate one of his Unimogs to Rhino Charge to work as a rescue and recovery machine for future events. Thank you, John. For the Braeburn Sevens team, this sector would prove their undoing. A broken A-frame on the rear axle stranded them. A temporary fix allowed them to continue, but they were forced to climb up in reverse. They'd head back to camp to attempt to weld it back together. For the defending champions in Team 5, this sector would also spell the end of their charge, a broken rear axle putting an end to their chances of going on. Several teams had ended up on their roofs, including the long-legged Suzuki of the mixed Team 57. A last-minute entry, the team was pulled together after a slot became available and had managed to raise the funds needed to compete in a very short time, winning them the Spirit of the Charge award. Brandon Barber had handed the wheel to Jamie Manuel after breaking his ankle a week before the charge. Still strapped in, he had tumbled down the hill when Jamie forgot the handbrake. Remarkably, they'd come third in the Tiger Line from Hardy and later in the day take victory on the Gauntlet as well. We caught up with the deranged Rovers, who had started strongly in the morning but had likewise fallen foul of the terrain. It took a while to get the car righted, but they were able to continue after the roll.
We did. We've been on our roof for the better part of this morning. The helmets work, the seatbelts work, the windscreen doesn't work.
Yeah. Calm. Right hand down.
The youngest driver on the event in the Bundu Bandits had also discovered the hard way that the charge can bite back. Their chosen winch point came loose as they were attempting to climb out near Slater. With such force, the car flipped over backwards. A tree saved them from going all the way to the bottom. Using a hand winch, they righted the car and managed to continue. After competing for 24 years, Mike Kirkland's band of merry men were calling it a day, competing in their final Rhino Charge.
We've been on our side. I had to have my feet on the door there just to stay in the car, but we got it out with the winch, so we've been doing an awful lot of winching.
It would be a tough final outing, which included rolling onto their side. They'd only make it to 3 controls. Some very tired crews were emerging at control points across the venue, and several cars were in need of repair before being able to continue. At the Tangerine control, crews were starting to debate whether their chosen route was at all possible.
Okay, we're there. 1 lugger, 2 lugger. This one is small. RD1, we stop.
For the unmodified cars, like the Danish team, they were resigned to driving around the steep-sided gorges, not feeling their mounts were up to the task of tackling the more technical sections.
That's not the worst thing that's happened today.
However, they reached 11 guard posts, finishing 8th overall.
No, it was tough, and those luggers were just vertical. Some places you could, and the Gauntlet was like in an unmodified car. It's like you just.
The girls in Pearls, however, were treating the charge as a game drive, using the roads for the most part. At one point in the afternoon, it was entirely possible they would win altogether by virtue of visiting the most guard posts. They'd finished 7th overall. Team AK-44 were in more of a hurry as they desperately tried to make up lost time. Still trying to drive straight where possible, they'd only done 4 checkpoints with just a few hours remaining. Despite some fuel pump issues that required an innovative solution, Team Huzi was still taking on the challenges, unwavering in their attempt to charge between guard posts. A slick use of their sand ladders getting them up the hill, and finally a last check of the GPS before setting off to tackle the next obstacle, and took an impressive win on the Hardy Vineyard Tiger Line. Over at Copycat, things were getting frantic. By mid-afternoon, time was running out, and the smiling Shenzis realised it was time to cut and run and try to reach as many guard posts as possible, whilst keeping a beady eye on the 40 kph speed limit.
This lugger here, we looked and looked and looked. We went that way. We didn't look this way. We went to about there and looked the whole way. Couldn't find anything.
All the way north?
All the way up to the road, yeah. Just
all the way there was impossible for them, Bruce, so they went round
we cut through somewhere here.
Yeah, there's a village.
Team 64 had had a difficult day and were resigned to simply trying to visit as many guard posts as possible, eventually getting to just 5. For several support teams that had made their way to the Gauntlet, it'd be a long day waiting for their cars that ultimately didn't make it. Several teams decided to tackle the Gauntlet after being stuck for most of the day. Along with the Tiger Lines, winning the Gauntlet offers some satisfaction when all else has gone wrong. Team 1 had spent most of the day stuck near Sandstorm after an overambitious attempt to follow a cattle track turned into a side-slope nightmare. The ground was giving way and they were forced to tie the car to a tree whilst they used the winches to turn around. They lost hours and only made it to 5 guard posts. Team Rouge eventually made it around to 11 guard posts, charging in a straight line where possible. However, they'd be penalised for speeding and have their total reduced to 9, costing them a top 10 result. The Rhino Charge has a strict 40 kph speed limit, designed for crew safety, and several teams would fall foul of this in the afternoon as they raced around in what would become a futile attempt to reach as many guard posts as possible. With time running out, the Aberdare Devils made their way by road from Sandstorm as they attempted to reach one last guard post. Another crew who had had a good day out were Team Wait A Bit, despite a broken fuel pipe that they'd hurriedly fixed. Reaching 12 guard posts, they'd also got penalised heavily for 40 speeding violations and lost 3 checkpoints to drop them from 2nd to 15th overall.
Well, you're not going to go if you can't put fuel in your car.
Yeah, you've got to move, the last one to do now.
Yeah, we are. We're going home. We have 13.
Yeah, but we're out of time.
Team 42 made 11 guard posts. The former champions had charged hard, but simply ran out of time, finishing 6th overall.
Bit late, we lost some time early on, but yeah, trying to catch up now.
For the first time in the history of the charge, there was only one finisher. Incredibly, the smiling Shenzis, who had charged for 8 sectors, made the wise decision to cut and run and managed to finish the entire route with just 4 minutes to spare. Their winning distance was 82.1 kilometres, on an ideal route that was just over 30 kilometres, making their total one of the longest distances against the straight line in charge history as well. The King 21 secured 2nd overall by virtue of reaching 12 guard posts, their distance a further 20 kilometres on at 103 k's. Having done a game drive similar to the girls in Pearls, the Hog Charge team in their unmodified Land Cruiser managed to also reach 12 guard posts, securing 3rd overall despite doing 169 kilometres. By comparison, Team 48 finished 4th, not veering from the straight line, but only able to reach 11 guard posts. Their total distance was only 44 kilometres, half that of the smiling Shenzis, with just 2 guard posts to complete. There was no question that this year's charge was one of the most difficult to date. However, for those who derive pleasure from attempting all the challenges presented and using their mounts to their full potential, this highly technical and runner-focused charge was considered one of the best, just too long for the 10 hours available. As crews arrived back at HQ in the evening, the struggles of the day turned into laughter as teams compared and recounted their adventures, in a spirit of camaraderie and sportsmanship that makes this event so special. Not everyone would get their car home straight away. Several teams, like Team 31, would have to return the following morning and for the next 3 days with the help of the officials to recover their car from a Marsabit trap. As the Rhino Charge community gathered for prize giving the following morning, the crews had time to reflect on another challenging but fantastic event, organised and run by a team of volunteers who give up their free time to make it happen. Every year, Rhino Charge support the local communities that host the event on their land through the collection of the landowner's access fee, which is paid by every vehicle that enters the venue. In 2017, the event raised £4,461,008 shillings for the Songa Conservancy on the slopes of Mount Marsabit. This year's winners and the only finishers of the event, the Smiling Shenzis led by Gray Cullen, took a momentous victory after several years in contention. They had judged the event perfectly with a clever mixture of charging and running and were very worthy winners.
I think we've got the highest winning score ever, so we're pretty proud of that record. But no, it was a very, very tough event. A number of river crossings. There's a lot of technical things going on in the course, and we actually enjoyed that. I have to say, we found that a lot of fun. When you get to a river section, you've got runners 1 kilometre in one direction, other runners 2 kilometres in the other. It goes to show how difficult this charge can be. So I think it came down to fitter runners and scouting routes, which we enjoy. You know, that's our kind of charge.
The biggest prize every year goes to the fundraisers. This is, after all, why the event takes place. The 3rd highest fundraisers in 2017 were Team 5, led by longtime supporter Alan McKittrick, who continues to be one of the highest contributors to the event. they raised 6,924,370 shillings, once again demonstrating their commitment to the cause. Peter Bond Nielsen's Team 64 had a tough charge but raised the second highest sponsorship with 8,839,850 shillings, a brilliant effort in the current economic climate. Unbelievably, Team 23 took the overall honours, raising a record-breaking 15,553,311 shillings. This incredible effort by the team once again demonstrates the support shown by friends, families and sponsors that the Rhino Charge enjoys. In 2017, Rhino Charge set another record, raising 153,499,914 Kenya shillings. This outstanding amount is the culmination of a full year's effort of fundraising by every single team that entered the charge, and is the true spirit of the charge. As teams head home and begin preparing for next year, the funds raised for the Rhino Ark Trust will continue to be used to safeguard Kenya's mountain water towers. It will continue to fund the building of the Mount Kenya fence, which is now stretched over 150 kilometres around the mountain, protecting both the forest and the community from wildlife that ventures into farmland to raid crops. Maintenance of the Aberdare fence, which was completed in 2009, requires annual upkeep, and expansion of the Mount Marsabit forest fence is also ongoing. The devastating drought that has affected Kenya in 2016-17 further demonstrates the urgent need to protect the last remaining water catchment areas in Kenya. An ever-expanding population increases pressure on the natural resources and land. Rhino Chargers continue to play their part in protecting the environment for the benefit of the country and future generations. The organisers, meanwhile, have already begun preparation, and the search for the 2018 Rhino Charge venue is on, scouring the land for the next challenge, which as always will be a tightly guarded secret, kept under wraps until 3 days before the event, somewhere in the bush. We'll see you there.
Stop. That's your money.